Doo-doo, chick-doo-doo.
Ooh.
That's the angle.
Ooh, what?
Chick-doo-doo. That's the podcast.
So, I guess we could just get right into it, eh?
We can talk about that Kansas fight yesterday. That was pretty hilarious.
Well,
Kansas played Kansas State.
What happened? I think I saw that on World Star this morning.
Yeah, of course. That's our platform now.
Most factual place for news.
Yeah, I think one of the Kansas State players got dunked on or something like that towards the end of the game, and Kansas was up, and one of the Kansas players, stood over top of the guy, and then benches cleared, chairs thrown.
Yeah, it looked pretty crazy. I saw a video this morning on World Star. I always check there in the morning, and I was like, "Oh, crazy basketball fight!" It's like someone just got disrespected and got their feelings hurt. Anyways, guys, welcome to That's the Angle. Today, I'm joined with Ian Callender.
Cheers.
Yeah, man. Cheers to that. Here, I'll cheers you with my Coke in your DC tap. And it's really cool to have you on, man, because I've had your friend Uncle Scooty on last year, and since then I was like, "Oh man, I gotta get Ian on."
Yeah.
And the dots just weren't connecting. I feel like I didn't have a good reason.
Yeah. Sure.
But then all of a sudden, recently you were appointed the artist or director member of the Commission on Nightlife and Culture.
Yeah.
And I thought that was a tongue twister, but also really interesting because I was like, what does this mean? It seems really exciting. Like you're going to do something for nightlife and culture. So I was like, all right, got to have you on. So
Sure.
Ian, what in the world does that certificate or honor mean?
So it's more of like a designation. It's an appointee position, and you apply. So you have to submit through the mayor's office, and what the organization, the mayor's office of nightlife and culture, led by Director Sean Townsend. It's an organization or an agency, the first of its kind, that focuses on the nightlife economy, anywhere from your restaurants, bars, lounges to your cultural spaces such as 52O and specifically all the artist units therein. But it highlights a segment of business that hasn't really been a focal point in governmental affairs. So the assembly of the commission is an alignment of individuals in different subsets of industries.
Okay.
So you'll have your restaurateur, you'll have your nightclub owner, and then you'll have your set of artists, whether it's a vocal artist, a visual artist, a performing artist, or someone like myself who was a director of an arts organization at Culture House, and Anwar Glover, who's the lead talker of Backyard Band, Maggie O'Neill, who's a visual artist.
Very familiar with Maggie O'Neill.
Yeah, so it's a collective, if you must, of individuals who fit the bill to help drive or at least focus on the mayor's initiative for nightlife and culture, more specifically help Director Townsend achieve some of those goals. And what I mean by goals, let's look at Washington D.C. as a whole. There hasn't really been a assessment, financially of what the nightlife economy does for Washington D.C.
Yeah, it's a very important part. Of any economy,
huge.
but
it's huge. But specifically in D.C. now being a restaurant city,
it is. Dude, I've been saying that for so long.
Man, listen, it wasn't. We did I always tell this story. We did a pop up with Vitamin Water back in 2010. Right below Florida Avenue on 14th Street. It was the old Department of Transportation, one of their offices before they consolidated and moved to Navy Yard. It was 25,000 square feet, and right when Brightest Young Thing started doing, kind of cool parties and stuff, that was really the only activity that 14th Street saw that wasn't, prostitution or drugs.
It was like that new kind of fresh pop-up.
Yeah, exactly. And, then 2014, 15 came around, and then boom, out of nowhere, it just started flourishing. Le Diplomat, Barcelona, and now just 14th Street between P and Florida is like 60 some odd restaurants.
14th Street is insane right now. You would not think about what it was probably back in 2010. Like 14th seems like the cool street to go to, like to go to restaurants, to go out,
all of that,
anything. It seems it's very hopping, and I have been saying this for so long, but it's the restaurant industry, like you're saying, that has spurred that.
Yeah, so now when you take restaurants and then you incorporate the nightlife, like clubs and lounges, that's a huge, tax base as well. The revenues that, park at 14th, on 14th Street, right below K, is again one of the top 100, nightclubs in the nation, as far as revenues that come in.
So are you just like making sure they get taxed? Like what's
No,
going on?
not making sure.
Like what's your duty here? Like what's the connection?
I think the assessment is, like how many people come from Maryland, how many people come from Virginia, how many people, what's their, job titles, like what are their, what's the background baseline to, ensure that the public space that park occupies to get people in and out of the facility are safe and in sync. Working with different agencies such as MPD. Like I don't know if you've been to park, but like there's always an MPD officer or a reimbursable detail that's always outside. So as a business owner, they're mandated to have police officers on site after specific hours when there's X amount of people in their establishment, just to make sure. But the club owners have to pay for that. But MPD reimburses the businesses because that should be
what's NPD?
Metropolitan Police Department.
Oh, okay.
But that's something that all businesses should have, some type of security for their patrons to, visit their establishments and not have, nothing to worry about when they leave. But there's a business, a formula within, the nightlife scene. And then of course with, arts and culture, kind of where I fit in that, we had, launched the Culture House, formerly Blind Wino in 2013 with no real intent of being active 7 years later. But now that we are, like challenges that we experience is the permitting office down at DCRA, right? So as an arts and culture organization, why are we faced with these specific challenges that, we personally can't figure out on our own?
So essentially you're there because of your experiences, which we'll talk about. You're there to help these businesses flourish between the relations of them in the city or them
and the agencies of the city. So it's more of like a liaison to ensure that if there are issues that are experienced by the multidimensional nightlife institutions, that we can help facilitate and steer or spearhead in many instances to make sure that they're not experiencing any lag in communication. We all know how DC government can be, and sometimes it's very challenging and overwhelming.
Yeah, dealing with any government entity is difficult, let alone being in like the center of it all.
Yeah, but I think each agency, they do their job extremely well, but it's often difficult with the complexities that come with those agencies to ensure smooth transitions, or at least just a smooth understanding for most businesses and establishments in the city.
Oh, that's really important, and it can probably be often overlooked. Just that so in a way you're kind of like that information guy, the liaison between everyone.
Yeah, I mean, if take DCRI for example, they have expediters, right? And expediters are...
What's DCRA?
Department of Consumer Regulatory Affairs.
Okay.
That's where most businesses, get their business licenses, building permits. Everyone that has a business in Washington, D.C. has at some point in time patronized 4th Street Southwest, which is where DCRA's office is located, their headquarters. But from a expediter approach, these are people who understand the inner workings of DCRA, and they practically have the DCRA Bible in the back of their head, right? So you want to go and get a business license, you might go to the website, and while it might be self-explanatory to someone that might not really be versed in the lingo or the language of DCRA, there's your expediter that has the supreme knowledge and can help you advance your application, or at least just provide you with the knowledge to get you from point A to point Z.
So in a way, it's kind of encouraging business. Like in a way, it's like you're trying to help them not shut down. Like
correct.
in that whole
properly.
Yeah, okay, do things properly, but by doing things properly, aka you won't get that giant bill or whatever it might be in the mail.
Or the fire marshal won't show
exactly.
up and be like, yo, where's your certificate of occupancy? I need to see that right
Yeah,
now.
you're there and be like, yo, you got to have this ready. You got to have the police here, which they'll pay you back. And because of this, you'll create a better nighttime experience.
Yeah, I mean, knowledge is definitely king, when it comes to all industries. And,
Facts.
I didn't fall into, the arts and culture, industry. I've been doing sneakers. That's my background. That's my passion. Throwing sneaker parties since I was a kid.
What's on the feet?
I got some shattered, backboards. Just,
jeez, you probably got my rent on your feet. Jesus, I'm scared to ask. Those some Jordan 1s though.
No, but rent's very high, so let's say no to that. But one of the things with me and throwing these sneaker parties back in the day was, there wasn't anything like that going on. And while this was my hobby, just collecting sneakers and finding a way to turn it into a business, the more and more I started doing sneaker parties, the more and more I said, well, I need to get legit. I can't just be throwing parties like, where's my insurance, where's my where's the liability, those type of things are things that we want to drive and ensure that businesses can have the tools that they need so that there aren't any issues moving forward.
So it's so interesting that everything that it all started with sneakers, and it's just like, how do I make more money, how do I make a better event? And slowly, it's like you're just doing things by necessity, and you've learned it and gained all this stuff.
Yeah, it's. I mean, we all hustle at the end of the day. Hustles. One of No King's mantras is hustle, but like there's legal and legit ways to hustle as well. And I think especially from an artist stance, I always implore all the artists to get legit. You know what I mean? Like, get your business license. Get your EIN, get your tax ID, because, and just polish up a bit, because that's how you'll get more business. Yes, you can Instagram hustle all day, and some people are phenomenal at that, but at the end of the day, we're doing 1099s right now, and people are like, oh, you need my W-9? Like, I don't have one. I was like, come on, man. Gotta get one.
That stuff's confusing though. Like when I first filed my business and stuff, and people asked me for W-9s, W-8s, all this stuff. Huh? I'm like, what? I'm like, what do I do? Like, it's not signed. Man, like,
listen, 2007, I was doing an event at District 51, which was the city's first sneaker store, boutique store, right on Georgia Avenue, Howard University campus, across from the McDonald's, and a guy that was the district manager of Scion used to come to one of my sneaker suite events at Mayor's Lounge, which is I think it's the Hyatt Place now, right around the corner on New York Avenue. But he said, hey, look, man, I want you guys to throw us an event. I love the way you set it up, and I'm like, okay, cool, whatever you want. And he's like, all right, just send me a proposal and put a price tag on it. And I'm like, okay, I've never done this before a day in my life.
Yeah.
Because I was just throwing these parties just for my own personal gratification.
And at these parties, you were like just selling the sneakers. It was an event where you would sell sneakers.
Well, we were actually just displaying the sneakers. We weren't even selling them.
Oh.
Because it was my personal collection. And then I would just display them as aesthetic form of art, because
interesting,
and then it got to a point where we started doing like sneaker pimps and selling sneakers and all that. But, he came back and says, well, look, I need a EIN and a W-9. And I'm like, I'm like, EIN? What the hell is that? And then I did my research, and I'm like, oh, he wants me to a tax ID number.
Yeah.
Like, I got to start a business now, because that was the only way I was going to get a check. The check was $2,500, but it was my first check. You know what I mean?
I mean, when you get that first check, I mean, that big brand deal. Like,
oh my gosh,
that you feel on top of the world, man.
I was, and I walked away with $0, but that wasn't my intent. I paid everybody else.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, I established a relationship with a brand that later funded me on almost anything I wanted to do.
That's amazing.
And then that's when I figured it out. very early in the game. So,
and so you were hustling sneakers. Like, I mean, you were doing sneakers before now, because sneakers now is at an all-time high. But back in 2010, those early days, it was like dunk culture and like SB culture.
Yeah, SBs. Like 2000. When the SBs dropped, I was in college. I went to Drexel in Philadelphia, and there was a store, Ubik. Ubik was.
Is that how you say it? I always thought it was Ubik.
Ubik.
I don't know.
Whatever. It was the only spot at the time that I would go to. And then you had like your online stores. So like Shoe Trends and, Nike Talk was always like our big platform where everybody would used to like just drop gems on releases. And then you had your locals, your Shoe City and DTLR. But that to me was like the start, because I would export with people from Europe. Back then Nike used to drop in Canada. They used to drop in, China, Thailand, Tokyo, different countries, and they each had their own specific colorway.
Whoa.
So that was kind of like the network at the time.
And you were kind of like the plug in this area?
Yeah, exactly. So I'm like the dealer, right? So like all of the ball players, all the celebrities, PA Palace, Cannon Sport, all these
they went
fashion
to you.
Retailers, they came to me.
That's crazy.
I used to just get like 10, 20 pair at a time, Flight Posit 1, 2s, foams.
How'd you get into that? Like, how'd you start like dealing sneakers?
I mean, I was always in the, I went to DeMatha High School, right?
Okay.
Rest in peace to Morgan Wooten, passed away today. But Prince George's Plaza was right around the corner. So that was always like our little go-to after school, after class. And, while everybody was hype on Jordans and, the foams, I used to just rock the clearance rack shit because it's like, well, look, I know for a fact that when I go to school and Casual Friday is around, I'm going to be the only one rocking, these Air Max, 97s with the odd colorway that ain't nobody want, and plus they're like $39. The Jordan trainers, the wrestling Jordan trainers, like ain't nobody want those. They went on clearance for like $39, $29.
You're swagging on the low.
I'm swagging on the low, and then I just started like growing and collecting and establishing relationships with people that had footwear that I desired. So Flight Posit 1 was one of my most coveted sneaker. I probably had every major colorway of that specific shoe. And my mom used to say, well, this shoe looks just like this shoe, but the sole is blue and this sole is red. And I'm like, that's the point, because colorway variance wasn't a thing back then. Now we get the color variance in larger production every Saturday.
Because now sneaker collecting, it feels so mainstream to me. Like it's like a popular hustle. It's a popular side flip.
It was a subculture at the time.
Yeah,
it wasn't about, let me buy this pair because I know I can get like, $1,000 or $2,000, to pay my rent. You know what I'm saying? But like, it was a lot of authenticity with it back then. But then media got on. Social media actually. Social media wasn't a thing until like 2010, 2011 when it really like started to take off. So
I mean, I think Instagram came out 2013.
Yeah,
you really weren't posting your fit pics like that.
Not at all.
No one was doing that on MySpace or Facebook or anything.
No one was doing that. Yeah. So we kind of kept it, underground. But then as everything, it became mainstream. And I mean, I don't collect as much. I mean, I still buy shoes that I don't need to, But I think for me, that'll always be the case. But it's just not the same. It's not the same anymore.
You don't have that same nostalgia feeling or something about it?
Nah. Well, now when you look at like everything's being retroed and it's not like the original, and then it's like let's just keep this original colorway. So.
Yeah, Dunks just came back too. Have you noticed that the resurgence of Dunks?
Yeah, more specifically SBs.
Yeah,
they kind of left SBs, kind of alone for a while. But I mean, it's been 20 years, so I guess it's time for.
Is that what it is? Like a 20-year cycle of when shit becomes cool again?
I mean, it's just like not to throw a dark tone over it, but it's like gentrification. That shit happens every 10, 15, 20 years, and. Probably a little longer for specific cities like D.C. to kind of experience it when it was once, just a chocolate city, for example.
Can we talk about that that DC? Because I feel like DC is heavily experiencing that, and you might have a lot more insight than a lot of my guests.
Yeah.
I grew up in Northern Virginia, so I've had like an outward looking in perspective, and I'm just gonna guess that maybe you've been in the city for a long time, or
I'm born and raised, and we spent some time uptown, and then my parents moved to New Carrollton, and then we went to Mitchellville, where I then went to college. But just from my experience, like school wise, Jules Van, off of Emerson, Riggs, and then DeMatha, John Carroll Elementary. So all of my scholastic experience has been in the city, but what I've noticed just from, and my mom's in real estate too, right? So even as a kid, I was always with her throughout the city, and just seeing, what she's experiencing as a realtor. We don't really, we never really, the city never really had a direction as far as, what's best for African American families. A lot of people who purchased properties probably didn't understand where the city was going. I guess there was no real direction. Like when you look at Southwest, because I live in Southwest right now, the wharf is something where Southwest was actually one of the most heavily populated African American communities in Washington D.C. Southwest, Southeast, in the 50s, 40s, 50s, right? Wow. So, and the city had 954,000 residents at the time in the 40s and 50s. Black business owners up and down 4th Street. You had Black Broadway, our Black Broadway on U Street.
I know 8th Street. 8th Street was pretty popping before the riots.
Exactly. So then urban renewal happened in Southwest, and that was, the first form of gentrification that, we experienced. In effect,
it started in Southwest.
It started in Southwest in 1951, I believe. And part of that was, the president, the Southwest is in close proximity to the capital.
Yeah, it is.
And the story was, other countries used to come into market and see this slum area in Southwest, because it was a lot of alleys, a lot of, tenements, and it just wasn't really presentable for any official to come. So they started doing their Urban Housing Act. And they decided to demolish all of Southwest from South Capitol all the way to the Wharf. Save a couple of churches like Friendship Baptist Church, which is where we did the blind
historical wine.
Exactly, right.
But you're saying like that seems more like a slow trickle. Like that seems like an over time. Like that makes that in a way makes sense, because it's like, of course they're going to do. They want to be presentable. But I feel like recently, like in the last 15 years, it's just exploded.
Yeah, it's that resurgence, right?
Yeah.
So it did happen rapidly. The population went from 954,000 down to 500,000 people now in Washington D.C. proper, and then of that, where did all those African American families? What happened with them? They got a couple of $1,000 and they moved.
They were displaced, right?
They were displaced. So there was a slow incline of newer DC residents. I think we're at 700,000 now.
Wow.
But you've noticed that starting in the early 2000s, the Nationals came and dropped their stadium right there. But that's where all of the entertainment, that was like the entertainment district. So you had Nation, you had Nexus, and 55, and all those other institutions over there where people and patrons used to go in Navy Yard. That was it. And now the city has realized that this is an opportunity to become the most dense neighborhood in Washington, D.C. based on zoning. So by right, every piece of parcel in Navy Yard can go up 110 feet, or 120 feet. You can't do that anywhere in Washington, D.C.
That is true. That is some of the highest buildings,
Correct.
Right on the wharf there.
And so as a city, that was already known, but again, knowledge is king, right? So that information wasn't provided to the people that already had property over there. They were just given that golden ticket, like, hey, here's $50,000. Let me go ahead and get this old garage that you own, without providing them the information of saying, hey, look, I know you own this garage, but you can actually build up 110 feet and get 20 condos or 200 apartments built on this land that you own. So that's kind of where you've noticed the larger gentrification.
It's kind of hidden. They don't want you to know that. They don't want you to know like the potential of your property because clearly they're kicking you out for a reason.
Yeah.
But in a lot of ways, I don't know if it's low income or not. It's when you're getting that check or whatever it is. It's easier to be persuaded when it's government money and dropping you checks. Oh, I just got to move down the street. But you don't realize that in 10 years, now you're going to have perhaps one of the most expensive parts of DC to even eat a meal in.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of interesting how they took like that place and then turn it to the most expensive entertainment part.
Yeah, and then a lot of the arts and culture were derived from prehistoric times where we had the jazz clubs and we had the arts environments, and now it's just being presented by other groups that come into Washington D.C. I've often thought about why there isn't like a DC native bill or people that are from this area, why don't they have an opportunity to the same opportunities that other folks have by coming into the market. But again, it does come down to just knowledge and having as much information or attain as much information as possible so you can present the best case for yourself or your business.
Yeah, because DC is such an interesting case because when does it stop? When will it stop? Like how much longer? Like what's the ceiling for it? We know we can only build so high up, but it's like at what point does it become ridiculous? Like, is it already ridiculous?
I think it's getting there, but in a good way though. I mean, every city should have the right to grow, right?
True.
But if there's not enough space, then what are you gonna do? I mean, that's what the mayor's faced with right now. Trying to find housing. We have a homeless problem right in Homme, across North Capitol.
They just kicked them all off from under that bridge, right?
Yeah, so
a lot of people are upset about that.
There's a lot of political strain going on right now, but I think she's trying to get 36,000 new homes online by 2025, which is a pretty aggressive goal. But I mean, it's an achievable goal when you think about unique and creative ways to bring new housing online. Obviously, the way that it's been working, it works, but it's a slow pace, right? So how can we find newer ways that it's non-traditional? Like even just going back to how we launched Culture House, like that was a non-traditional approach. Sandlot, that was a non-traditional approach. These are all non-traditional approaches to bring arts and culture to different neighborhoods in Washington D.C. without having to go through so much red tape. So I think there's a lot to say about. And it's a sensitive topic as well. Gentrification is.
It's super sensitive because it's something that it's hard to talk about, especially as like a white dude. It's like what do you know? It's like, well, I can speculate, I can have opinions. Yeah. Because on one side, it's like you're displacing people, right? You're displacing people, and they have to go somewhere. That's terrible. Like people shouldn't be forced out. Sure. But on the people who are for it, it's like you're improving your cities. You're making it more attractive for tourism. You're making you're cleaning, quote unquote, cleaning up your city. And so it's kind of a weird dilemma where it's like this is good, but at the same time, people are suffering because of it.
Yeah, it's cart and horse, chicken and egg.
Yeah,
that whole complex. I mean, we saw like 20-some million people come in and out of DC. That's not from here, visiting them. Museums, the monuments, those are huge numbers. You know what I mean? So to know that, we are, polished on that approach, but then every city, has their own problems and issues. I think we have a unique, instance because we're welcoming so many visitors at the same time as trying to resolve all these issues. So it's got to be like a delicate balance at the end of the day.
Yeah, dealing with all the new people who are just here for a little bit. Yeah. And then people who are actually from here trying to do business and thrive.
Yeah, it's tough.
Yeah, let's just blame the restaurants for gentrification. Let's just do it that. Sorry, man, you're part of it now. Man, you're helping these restaurants.
I'm with it though, because I'm not gonna lie, I'll be at those restaurants. I'm a foodie. I'm a fat boy too, but I'll be at those restaurants.
Do you have a favorite spot in DC?
Food wise, I I mean, I'm always at Park. I've been at Eaton the last couple of days. It varies for me. I mean, I'm a chicken wing head, right?
Okay.
So I got like all the chicken wing spots on lock, and I do go to like spots in Virginia and in Maryland, like I'll go to Chima, which is a Brazilian steakhouse out Tyson's Corner, like Fogo, where they bring the meat.
Oh,
to
that's
your
some real
table
good
and you
stuff.
like,
Oh my God, I love when they do that.
yeah, so that's
the
like
best.
one of my spots. But I try to just bounce around.
Okay,
like Kithkin. I mean, I live right there in Southwest, so Kithkin is a great establishment. Chef Kwame does a phenomenal job, but then I'll bounce to Maryland and go to Kitchen Craig Cafe, which is more southern, with Chef JR and Sue and those guys. But
Question: do you think Florida Street Grill is good?
I've been there twice, and it was satisfying.
Really? You
both
enjoyed
times.
it?
I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it. I was out there early, looking at some properties out there, and when it was open, it was my thing.
So is it safe to say that you're more of like an event producer now? Is that your main? Like you kind of when I look at a lot of stuff that you do, it's a lot of, it seems like event production, event based.
Yeah, I can claim that. I think by doing a lot of the sneaker parties back in the day, the formula hasn't changed. It's always been, establish a venue, create a theme, create a concept, production wise, music, food, art, all of those elements you see today in your larger produced events and in your smaller. I think I've found a niche with the corporate sector, like the sponsors, and really presenting some unique ideas and influential concepts that can carry value not just in one particular market, but across the nation or even global. And those are again things that you haven't seen before. Like Wings and Whiskey was a concept.
I saw that. Yeah, I saw that.
And I think what the two things with that is, I love wings and I love whiskey, right?
It's a great
so
combo.
without categorizing a specific whiskey. Jack Daniels was one of our partners at the time, and Donovan Booth, who has moved on, was working with Brown Foreman, and I kind of just presented the idea of like, hey, I think Wings and Whiskey, alliteration is like I love alliteration, like that's my shit. Like I could probably write like 1,000 poems that's all alliteration. But I said, let's do something for Super Bowl. I think it was like 6 years ago, maybe even sooner. And Bonchon just opened up a Navy Yard, and they were like hurting for business. And I was like, yeah, man, like let's just do Wings and Whiskey here. I think it'll be cool
At Bonchon?
At Bonchon, and I was like, well, that'll be a first for like, Jack Daniels to do something in Bonchon, who probably never thought that they would do a party of that magnitude, and it was a hit. And so I said, well, let's do this again. So we did it for NCAA Final Four.
It's so interesting because you make it seem so casual to just work with these big brands, but for someone like me who's been getting into event producing and thinking about that stuff, it seems so unobtainable to talk to these big brands and to make it all work out.
Well, the one thing that I would say was a takeaway for me is that, and you can, and a lot of these places again are places that I patronize. So it's one thing and that's what I tell people, like it's one thing to say, yo, I need a sponsor, yo, get me Hennessy, or yo, get me Crown Royal, or yo, give me Coke. But like, are you really a Coke drinker, or are you just saying you want to get Coke because you see that they're doing all this other stuff? Or are you really a Hennessy drinker? So for me, the joy in all of that was, okay, well, I started doing stuff with sneakers first and foremost, and then I started working with Nike, and I started working with Adidas. But like, I'm going to like, Nike's regional office for like the sample sales in Columbia, Maryland.
Oh, wow.
And I'm finding out who Coach is, or who Rigo is, and Trish McKinney. These are people that work in the office. So just establishing relationships at that time. Then I started working at Shoe City, right? So I, even before I was working at Shoe City, I used to reach out to Shoe City on opportunities of participating in some of my sneaker events.
Oh, wow.
So that was how that connection. It's all relationship.
It does seem very
building,
relationship, yeah.
you know, but it aligns with authenticity and you know, geniality. Those are things that you don't really find in this industry, let alone working with corporate partners. So if you did have a laundry list of things that you wanted to, you know, attain, or people that you wanted to work with, or organizations that you wanted to work with, that's where I would say start. You know, start with what you love, start with what you know, and then the rest will it'll fall in suit. You know, like the baby right now, who's one of the hottest, you know, artists, you know, that you know, top of the game. I've been working with his management, you know, Arnold Taylor down in Charlotte, South Coast Music Group, since 2013. 2014, wow. We were doing stuff down in Charlotte for CIAA, which is a, you know, it's a conference. All the HBCUs are in a conference, and the CIAA tournament is like a big thing down in Charlotte. So I would be doing these dinner parties down there, again, because nobody was really doing dinner parties back in the day.
Interesting.
And so like 2010 was our first one down at CIAA. It was a dinner for Rick Ross. Me and Wale wanted to. He just signed a Maybach Music Group, and he wanted to do a dinner for Rick Ross, like an appreciation dinner.
Yeah.
So we did the dinner. Lance Gross, Idris Elba.
Like you produced it. Like your company was like
top to bottom, right?
Okay.
So we got the sponsor, Ciroc, you know, Fever, Stimulation Beverage, just enough to fund the dinner. And then from then I said, well, look, I'm gonna do this dinner every year at this one specific restaurant, because it was so easy and just unique outside of the norm. And then Arnold used to bring around Yo Gotti. That was one of his artists that he, you know, had brought to the forefront, and we just hit it off. And so last year we did the baby for All Star, and that was my first time meeting him as a talent. But
what's he like? What's meeting the baby like?
He's cool. He's a humble dude, smart, you know, very intelligent, very genuine. He's a genuine guy. So, and I think that gets misled in media. You know,
he's been getting a bad rap recently.
But you know, I mean, obviously, you know, you know, shoot to the top. I mean, he's been on top of his game for a while. You know, we're just now getting, you know, or the general public is just now getting familiar with him. So,
because he's from the North Carolina area, right?
He's from Charlotte. So, but you know, just like for that, you know, because we started doing other things after we did the All-Star event, you know, and we did one of the things that I had asked Arnold. I said, well, what's his favorite? What does he like? You know what I'm saying? Like, what is he on the spirit side? What does he like to drink? And he was like, Hennessy. And so I was like, all right, well, let's get Hennessy in line with the baby. So I think that's how easy it is to kind of start.
Oh, that's an easy sell right there. Hey, Hennessy, I got the baby. You want a partner? Of course we do.
Well, no, I mean, not even that, but it's just, you know, understanding where it can make sense. Like, yes, everybody can do a deal or sign with, you know, Fiji, but I might be a Dasani guy. You know what I mean? So it's like,
more true to you.
It's more true to the person. It's more true to the individual. So, you know, again, like that's where I would try to tell people to start. You know, like if you want to do, you know, something sneaker related, start at Shoe City or DTLR. You know, those are two local retailers that you can have access to directly. You know, if you want to get access to like wine and spirits, or, you know, go to an event that you know for sure is sponsored by that particular brand, you can walk into a room and easily identify who the rep is. You know what I mean?
A little bit of social engineering, like social hacking, like kind of finding that puzzle piece before you need it.
Yeah, it's like, I think that person that's standing right there with all of the other brand people around them, you know, wearing the shirts and shit. Like, that's the person right there.
Oh, that's the hack right there.
It's not hard to tell.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I'm asking so selfishly too, but I'm sure a lot of people like find a lot of value in that, because I just did my third exhibition, and like we locked in a sponsor, got some sponsorship money. And I was like, yes, like it felt so good. Like we made a pitch deck, like it looked so good. Like we presented it, they loved it. The concept went great. The night went great. They were so stoked. And like all I could think afterwards was like, how do I get a bigger one? How do I get more money? How do I do this so I can make my event better?
Yeah, you always gotta overstep your last task.
Yeah,
you know, and those pitch decks, like I used to spend so much time on those pitch decks, and then it just got to a point where I was like, man, fuck these pitch decks. I was like, this shit is not worth the days and days of putting together a 20 meg PDF where they're not even going to look at it. So then I kind of just smartened up and I said, well, let me just start creating these web pages, because everybody, it's easier for me to send a URL through text or through email or through you know, like it's easier for me to lay out the information with access by way of a link than by way of a document that gets sent an email that has to get downloaded, that might get flagged in spam. Like,
I see exactly
it was
what you're
more
talking
challenging.
about.
And then by me doing these web pages, now they have more access to photos and video links. I'm huge on post-production. Like, I don't give a fuck about the event leading up to the event. Like, none of that shit matters at the end of the day. You can have an event with 30 people in the room. You can have the illest cameraman and video man in the world that can make that 30-person event look like it was something that you missed.
Like it was packed, like you missed an epic night. Yeah.
But like that, to me, that's always been my MO.
So you're saying the post-production has like all the content generated from the event is the most important.
It's the recap. It's all in the recap. Like, that's how you're able to now, like,
damn, I fucked up.
That's how you're able to like really like I can't stress how important that is. You know what I mean? Like, I mean,
it's proof. It's like proof.
Like, we've been doing this shit like since like my Facebook, and it's funny because at the time, you know, we've been doing these events since 2007. Facebook was the portal to like house like all of our event shit, because it's, you know, 2007, 2008, 2009. And then we started doing like the videos, like the real deal. Sneaker Pimps DC was probably one of our, no, that wasn't our first video, but I was working with First Impressions. And this was a group of young kids. First time they ever like picked up a camera, and this is when like Wale, you know, like J. Cole had opened for Wale at DC Star, you know, and then Wale opened for Clips. You know, that was the Sneaker Pimps bill at the time. So
you didn't know it back then.
Didn't know it. You know, I think he did like his little Simba track, and that was it. And I was like, damn, like, man, now. But the First Impressions video team, you know, like took that video. It was like 8 of them, and you know, they started doing other Sneaker Pimp shows, other little things I would kind of get involved with. I was like, yo, y'all want to come do this video? You know, here's $250. Like, have fun, because I'll always get it budgeted with the sponsors. Now looking back, like, you know, Orly's rolling with J Balvin. Chris is rolling with Shy Glizzy.
Oh, they're all videographers for like really big acts right now.
Yeah, like, you know, like Fernando is still holding me down. Fernando's like been doing all of our like current events and programming. He's been around the longest, you know, like, but that to me was again the most important piece, like being able to take the photos and the images. Because remember I said I stopped doing those pitch decks? Yeah. It's like, well, here's what we did last month with this brand. You know, here's the video. Look at the video. That's the pitch deck for the next program.
That makes it like, yeah, here's our track record. Here's the proof. Yeah. Here's the Facebook page. Here's like the link to the website.
Here's our portfolio. And then based off of that, you'll determine or you'll decide instantly if you want to work with us or not. I don't have to like convince you. You know what I mean? Although people, I mean, it still should be a good practice for people who are trying to get, you know, deep in the game. I mean, I'll do pitch decks for like larger, you know, monetary takes, I should say. You know, like did one for Sandlot. Sandlot, I did a pitch deck, and here's another hack. Microsoft PowerPoint has a new tool where they have like design ideas. So you can throw like 4 images on a slide, and it'll give you like 12 different options of how those images can look
That
with
seems
like unique different, iterations of the photos.
Whoa.
Where back then, like, I'm in Photoshop.
You're just
I'm
moving it around.
I'm moving shit around. I'm trying to cut the image. That's been, huge because it's doing something fairly quickly and getting a good turnaround. But like Sandlot, I'd had, we had to do a deck because we needed like 120,000 to build this space.
Yeah, Sandlot Southwest is a very interesting thing that you did because it seems like it doesn't make sense to me. You got permission to do this thing in front of the Audi Stadium. Like, it doesn't seem like that should be able to happen.
I mean, it was someone else's property. You know what I mean? So, and that property was destined to be demolished at some point. So we saw an opportunity to activate, and that's always been our thing. Like, how can we, again, take a non-traditional idea and convert it into a usable space that, the people could take advantage of. And that's now has been like our biggest charge. It's like looking at the empty, abandoned spaces or dilapidated spaces. Why can't we, activate and get some of these dope artists in there so that we can get some more eyeballs on it? You know what I mean? Like, that to me is where, we've been at all these years, and now it's just a matter of doing more things like Sandlot. We're working on a Sandlot, Northeast. We're working on a Sandlot Southeast. We're working on other ways to kind of spread it around.
Sandlot's interesting because what it did, like what you did, you turned a demolished, empty, just lot into this happening, like, pop-up feeling bar right outside one of the most expensive stadiums in D.C., like the Audi Stadium. It's like, to me, business-wise, I was like, damn, that's so genius. I was like, that's the best pregame spot. But then I was like, but also what you're doing, bringing that culture to, I'm like, that's really cool too.
Yeah, and what we realize is that there's not a lot of, like, people aren't intentful with that thought, right? So thinking back to like the bullpen, perfect example. When they did Nat Stadium, this was a great opportunity for, someone to do a shipping container, kind of yard. And that's actually, where, the first Broccoli City Fest was in D.C. You know what I mean? So, you have that type of ideation, but really making it more about the people versus making it about the sport. Like, we did build Sandlot adjacent to Audi Field, but that wasn't our intent. Like, we didn't build Sandlot for Audi Field patrons. We built Sandlot because this was an opportunity for us to have an outdoor venue where we can have go-go till 3 a.m. in the morning, or we can, and speaking of go-go, I mean, the old East Side is on that same block. So it's very nostalgia to again, focus an area that speaks more to our culture. And what I mean by our culture, just, the younger generation and folks where it's not driven by sports. And to be able to bring in a Chocolate City Farmers Market, or to bring DC Jazz Festival, or, to have an Art All Night experience. Those are the type of programs that you don't see anywhere in the city. And it's often a challenge for people to find space. So it's like the more space that we create with the intent to satisfy that component, the more activity and engagement that we'll have from neighbors and community leaders and visitors to Washington, D.C. Like,
in a way, it kind of feels like, and I love that you said you didn't do it like with the monetary aspect of across from Audi Field. I love that. I'm a terrible person, but like it seems like you're holding this space like for the right reasons, but also it seems like you're holding it to facilitate these events, because that space could have easily just been like a Buffalo Wild Wings, but you're like, nah, let me step in here and create something so we can provide opportunities to other people. Yeah,
and we're still giving developers and people that opportunity to facilitate those deals. Like, when a building gets built, we know for a fact that there's 12 to 18 months, maybe even longer, before a lease deal gets struck with a Buffalo Wild Wings or whoever. We actually did a program in Virginia at the Buffalo Wild Wings before it was Buffalo Wild Wings.
Oh, wow.
So when it was just a vacant space, we worked with Crystal City Bid to activate it with arts and culture. And that's the same ideation that continues to this day. It's like when you're building a new facility, you know, No Kings did it recently at the Liz down on 14th Street. They activated the lot. They tore the building down. They brought the building back up. They had this vacant space. And then they did an Art All Night event in that vacant space. But
where they painted the building into the parking lot. Yeah, I was there. It was so cool. Cool.
So just, you know, quantify that now. You know, like that's the new way of community engagement, community building, without, you know, it really being a burden financially for a developer to try to figure out how to get the community engaged in this, you know, 110-foot building that's being built in the neighborhood.
I feel like these pop-up things have just become so common. Like it's like the thing to do now. It's like a temporary experience.
It's less risk.
Yeah,
I mean, there is no risk. I mean, when you look at most restaurants, and that's why like a lot of restaurants are closing. You know, they don't have that. You know, it's never. I mean, rent is dumb. You know what I mean? Especially, you know, looking at taxes and all that stuff. We get that you got to make money, but there's other ways to achieve, you know, the goal of having this type of community asset, whether it's a restaurant, a gallery, a lounge, a theater, whatever. It's always a benefit for the community, but most developers they don't think like that. They're all numbers guys. They don't give a fuck about that culture.
They're not worried about it.
Can you pay rent? If you can pay rent, then you can come here, regardless. You know, so it's always just a tough.
Yeah, interesting hack, right? Hack that people like you have just in a way founded, like by you doing your sneaker events for the sake of the sneakers, like, and even just thinking about that, that's kind of cool. You're just presenting it as like a piece of art. Like, I thought I remember thinking about that a while ago, and I was just like, oh yeah, that is pretty sweet. Like, sneakers are art. Like they are, at the end of the day, art. But it was the sneakers that propelled you into doing the pop-up at the Blind Wino before it became Culture House.
No,
or into that space.
The Blind Wino, we were actually working. We were in Forest City. We were working with Forest City at the time at Yards Park. So Yards Park had just popped online and working with the developer there to do, you know, same shit, right? You know, bring some fashion, bring some sneakers, bring some art, bring some food. You know, everybody have a good time. And then the property owner, Steve Tanner, had approached one of our former business partners to, you know, paint the building. And that was just kind of like a one-off in October 2012. I don't think there was any intent to do anything beyond that. But then we, you know, kind of started digging more into it. And then I was working with Heineken and Ciroc at the time through the G2 agency and then the Blue Flame agency, which is Diddy's agency.
You were helping them with events and stuff.
Yeah, and I was doing stuff with them outside of, you know, Blind Wino. And then we were able to, you know, get some funding. And, you know, we got like this, you know, 1-year lease, you know, from Steve. And, you know, he became a part of the mix. And you know, he's now like, you know, kind of running the show. But, you know, we had to establish a nonprofit organization. I mean, I had a for-profit business, and then my former business partner had a for-profit business. So by us doing a nonprofit, that's how we were able to activate the space, because the only type of user, since it was a former church, had to be a nonprofit. And we often said like, well, why don't we do something that's more for, you know, artists, because there isn't a space in Washington D.C. that speaks to local artists in
especially
the area,
at that time,
especially in 2013. And so we just combined everything, and then, you know, and then it was a hit, you know, and so that was kind of like the introduction of it. But we didn't, again, intend on, you know, it becoming like a wedding destination. B, just the amount of people that came that first year.
I mean, that place is crazy, dude. It's a church. It's in Southwest, right?
Yeah,
it's one of those places that was left standing. Like,
it was preserved.
It's a beautiful church that has painted with crazy colors, and then you go inside, and you're like, what in the world? Like, this is nuts. Like,
so that was like, you know, and Hence did the exterior mural, and then Megs did the feature mural upstairs in the performance space. And again, like, we were very intentful of making artists feel like this is like their home. You know what I mean? Like making them feel like this is something that they can, be themselves and feel represented. Yes, we have Smithsonians and other museums, but no, we don't have anything of this magnitude that can be a representative for those artists. So we would have rotating art exhibits in the art annex, and I think that is where we really that's when we realized that this was something special. And it is, and by changing it to Culture House, it was time for a refresh. You know what I mean? Like, it's been, again, 7 years. 7 years is completion. So it only made sense to shift.
It fits the mission, like it fits the goal.
It fits
a little
the mission
better.
more. I mean, Blind Wino has some challenges, obviously, because the
sounded
name,
really cool though.
Wino,
It sounded really
street
cool.
name. It'll always be Blind Wino. You'll see a hashtag from me every once in a while. But like, we couldn't do anything with the mayor's office. We couldn't do anything with different schools because of the wino connotation. So while it was cool, it just wasn't. It wasn't worth not working with specific agencies and schools and organizations because of that. Sense. So and almost instantly, as soon as we changed it, we changed it originally to Southwest Arts Club because we kind of were in between Blind Wino and Culture House. And as soon as we did that, we were Blind Wino Southwest Arts Club. So when we dropped the Blind Wino, like, we got something with the mayor. We got a bunch of schools looking to do proms, and it was cool. And then Culture House kind of accelerated a lot of things. So
yeah, it's definitely a big deal. It's something that you're really well known for. Like, you do a lot of stuff, but that's one of the big things when you look up your name. It's like Blind Wino, Culture House, Ian Callender. It's like well, you do a lot more besides that.
Yeah, but you know what? It's cool because like the Sneaker Suite, so that's my parent company name, right? And even back when I was throwing Sneaker Suite parties, like, people didn't really know, like, well, what's Sneaker Suite, or what's Sweet Nation? Like, what, like, I'm very vague, like, you'll go to, Sweet Nation's website and there's, like, minimal information.
That's true. I was on it. There is minimal information.
There's a lot of photos.
Yeah.
There's a lot of videos. So, it's almost like the Black Godfather. It's like, at some point he's an important person, but I don't know what the fuck he does.
That's the best way to describe you and Uncle Scooty is the Black Godfather is a DC. Like, when I think about it, like, I think of you guys like the OGs who've just been here and facilitated all this new wave of energy that's happening right now.
And I think it's better that way. Like, I don't want, like, I don't really do this, you know what I mean? But it's like, I love, like, now it's important because like this information is free, like, I'm accessible. Like, I want people to, know what my journey was like, like, I can only imagine being someone that was born after 1981, you know what I mean? Like, to have the tools and resources that, you have access to now that we didn't have access to. Yeah. So it's like we had to work twice, as hard, which was great because it helped me grow as a person or us grow as people. But now, like, it's time to provide that information so that people don't have to work as hard. Like, I would never say, man, I ain't about to help you or I ain't about to tell you, how to get money or how to, finesse the game. Like, nah, like, this knowledge is super free.
Yeah.
I want you to have it all.
Yeah, there were no podcasts when you were starting your events. Like, wait, I got to do what? Like, there was no podcast like with some OG in the game being like, here's all the knowledge. Like,
man, our knowledge came through hip hop and rap and, school. So that's where, I went to school for engineering.
Oh, you did? So it's nothing related to anything.
Well, I got a dual degree in engineering and IT, but then I got a business administration minor. So the minor where I took marketing 101 and all of that stuff.
That was the most important thing.
Blew my fucking mind. I will lie to you not. Like,
really?
Yeah.
What about it? Like,
it was just like 2003. It's like doing it's funny, me and my friend Angela, we talk about it today. Like, it was just like, take this product, market it, promote it, do an event, all of that, kind of stuff. And that shit excited me, more than being in, mechanics or systems and all that nerd shit. Like, that's cool too, but this is where it was at. And I think, because I graduated in 2004, that was, right at when I started, when I did my first sneaker party. And so I kind of like rolled right into it off the energy of just what I just recently learned. So
it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I mean, I worked for Department of Defense as well, and then that Washington Post article dropped. And then as soon as that dropped, I was like, man, I don't even want to work here no more.
What was the article?
It was called Soul of the Sneakerhead. It was just kind of like, it was the front page of the Washington Post. It was front page of the style section.
With your face on it?
With my face on it, with sneakers all around me and shit. Yeah.
And that was off of your first event?
Well, this was just off of my collection. This wasn't even about events at the time. It was just the state of sneaker collecting. And that's when I told myself, I said, yo, like, I want to start doing like more like sneaker parties. Like, that to me is where like the real energy comes from. And then it just took off.
What was it like trying to create that first sneaker event? What was like? What do you remember what you were thinking?
It was my birthday party.
Oh, whoa!
Yeah, so it was easy.
People had to go.
Man, listen, it was easy for me. It was like my first birthday, like back home. Like yo, I'm the sneaker guy, so everybody, wants
got that article.
Yeah,
you got a buzz
I had
going.
An article out there, and it's like, yo, look at me, y'all. Like front page, like you see it, you go to the website. But like, and then my dad did the catering.
Oh, wow.
So he cooked like jerk chicken. My parents are Guyanese, right? So he cooked the jerk chicken, and cinnamon salmon, shrimp, and strawberries. What else he cooked? Like, just
sounds great.
Helping his son out.
Yeah.
But, a lot of people don't realize, like, back then, like, I used to have these glass cases that I would lug in my Jeep. You know what I mean? Like, 2-3 glass cases from IKEA, and I would put all of the sneaker stuff in there, and then that's kind of was like how it like became a thing. You know what I mean? And that was like super impressive.
The thing just like fell off while you were talking. I was like,
it was some special effects right there.
I was like, it's got really bright up in here.
I did that. I got so excited. I was like, yeah.
Yeah, your energy's taking off on the thing, man. Dang. I'm just gonna leave it. It'll be fine. About it.
I mean, do I look good? Yeah.
It's like a spotlight hit us. The diffuser came off. It's like, gosh.
But yeah, man. So that to me was where when I realized I had something special. And again, I wasn't doing it for financial gain. I was just doing it because I knew that it was a subculture, and people always used to question, why the fuck is Ian standing in line for like 2 days for some shoes, for some Espos, like. Air Force, like, no.
That's so normal now, but back in the day, it was so goofy.
Oh my gosh, I used to get clowned like heavily.
Oh yeah,
like heavily. Like, I mean, like, I would be at. I'm trying to think of some instances, like the Yeezys, for example, because remember, like, social media wasn't a thing. Right.
Oh yeah, when the Red Octobers came out, those were the first Yeezys, right?
No, those
weren't.
Yeah, there was another series before then. So when the first Yeezys came out, like I'm on Nike Talk, and we're like in the DMV chat room, which was like we used to do meetups, like shit just used to be different.
Back on the forums,
back in the day, man. The fucking forums was everything. But like we used to have like Social Study, which was a store in Frederick, Maryland, used to have, AJ, worked there. He would post on there like, all right, y'all, the shipment just came in.
Oh,
we drop in tomorrow, 10 a.m.
Yeah.
And, it wasn't like you had notifications on your phone. It's like, nah, we had a whole nother situation. So I literally got up from work that day at Shoe City in the middle of work.
What?
With no plan, I just up and rolled, and I was like, yo,
you just quit on the spot?
Whoever. I didn't quit. I just left. I just got up and rolled because I was in Baltimore.
Yeah. And
I knew that Baltimore was close to Frederick, Maryland. Got on 70, got to Frederick, Maryland, and, got in line. No clothes, no no nothing.
How long did you wait for it?
Like overnight, you know.
Damn.
And the funny thing was, like, it was a rack of other people that, you know, did the whole thing, and I ended up getting like the last pair.
Oof.
And then the day it released, I went down to Commonwealth, and then they did a raffle, right? So because it came out, you know, Saturday.
Yeah.
Right? Went down to Commonwealth. They did a raffle, and your boy won.
So you won. You got two of the same sneaker
At the same time. So, but that was the rush.
Yeah, when you get it.
Like, that's just the rush, man. So even if you don't get it, you know, there have been times where I would drive to New York to get, you know, stuff out of Nike Town. Nike Town was kind of like the go-to, right?
Yeah.
And there was a way where you could get shoes from other Nike Towns that would drop the shoes, even though you were in like I would order, like, if I knew that Nike Town Chicago just got their shipment, I can call Nike Town Chicago and from DC and be like, yo, I want that pair, and they'll just do a over the phone order and mail you the shoes.
Whoa.
Yeah. So back then it was different.
It was so different.
It was different. Now it's like, you know, it's a fucking app. Like, I hate sneakers.
Oh,
app.
like StockX.
StockX.
You hate that app?
I don't hate it, but it's just like,
it makes being cool too easy. It makes it. It kind of takes away that magic of like you have to know people. You haven't. It kind of Now if you just got the guap for it, it's like, okay, I got the Yeezys.
I mean, I remember walking into Shoe City in Capitol Plaza and getting like 10 pairs of Easter Air Force Ones, because back then it wasn't like one pair only, because these shoes would just sit if you didn't know when the shit dropped. And I knew that I had people that wanted these shoes, so I would go in there at a time like, yo, y'all got those Easter Air Forces? All right, let me get 10 of them. Here are the sizes I need. You know, and then turn around and sell it for double. I would even knocking niggas in the head. I was just like, you know, $60, $80, $100 over retail.
The sneaker hustle it's such a respectable hustle. It's so similar to like dealing drugs, but it's legal. You know, I've always admired anyone who could hustle anything.
Yeah, that was my drug, I guess. Like, that was, I mean, it wasn't. I mean, technically, yeah, I guess it was legal drug hustle right there.
Yeah, it's like it's like one of those.
I thought that way. I used to, you know, pop open the trunk and do the exchanges.
I mean, you're driving to different states and shipping it and importing it back. You're popping the trunk. You're calling the plug on the phone.
Yeah, nah, it was, you know.
It's crazy. So it's so nuts how life works out. Like it started with something like that, and then just because of sheer necessity of bringing what you want to life, like now you've opened, like you're in charge of, or you're a part of this church that helps events and culture and society and arts in DC, and then now it's like you have the Sandlot, which is just on its own and running right now. Like, what is there anything you're working on right now that's up and coming? Yeah,
I mean, there's some other spots that we're working on in Southwest and Northeast and Southeast. Really, every neighborhood should experience what Southwest experienced. Like, it was so true to form, and you know, a lot of that is to the you know, compliments of Steve Tanner, who owns the building. You know, he wasn't charging his rent.
Wow.
You know, like, that's rare.
That's super rare.
You know what I mean? And for him to open his doors and to be so encompassing or so welcoming to what the neighborhood, you know, can be, that's huge. So when you look at other neighborhoods that either don't have or need a cultural institution, you know, what can that look like? So again, going back to the initial, you know, conversation about being on a, you know, commission of nightlife and culture, it's like, well, how can I help facilitate that task?
Yeah.
You know, how can I help facilitate, you know, like Ward 7 and 8 doesn't really have next to anything, you know, so to be able to work with, you know, like a Stephanie Reiser, who's, you know, another small developer, but, you know, she bought a property on Nicholson Street in Southeast, right off of Minnesota, and we created the Nicholson Project, which is our artist in residency and urban farm right in a row home with a 9,000 square foot lot that she bought in 2015. You know, so there's so many different ways to mount cultural institutions, but we just, it's a resource thing at the end of the day. So I can only imagine if we got, the city, the government side behind it from an interagency aspect, the amount of accessible spaces that could come online for folks like yourself to have additional podcast locations or to just do this type of, programming in another part of the city. Like that to me is what I'm really working on, this year. Yeah,
space is the thing for everyone, especially in cities like this. It's space and the cost of space, and it's how do you solve that problem for people who don't have the money for space? Like,
I mean, you have this huge document that was drafted by Office of Planning, and then the Office of Cable Television, Film, Music, and Entertainment, and then the Arts and Humanities, the Commission on Arts and Humanities. So, and that's the commission that focuses specifically on art, but it's the cultural plan, right? So it's a huge document. You can look it up, cultural plan, I think .com or .org, but it literally is a 3-year processed document with feedback from every neighborhood, every ward, every quadrant. And the one thing that almost every organization or person of importance in the arts kept saying was the need for space. And I used to go to these meetings and say, well, shit, we got 12,000 square feet. What y'all need? But just the ability, our facility was ailing, you know what I mean? And it was built in 1886. So it was often hard to satisfy or justify a dance group coming in and there's concrete floors or whatever the case is. But like the fact that there's such a need for space, how can we correct that?
That's interesting. It's like all that data, and the biggest conclusion was that people just want more space.
Space. It's accessible space, because one of the ideas was, well, a lot of these schools close at 4:00. Dunbar, they close at 3-4 o'clock. And the school is just there. But then you get into insurance, then you get into liability, and then you get into all of these other things that
I see what you're saying.
That vote that out.
It gets sticky real quick.
But then but understanding like community centers and understanding what you can and can't do in those accessible spaces. So again, it comes down to knowledge. It comes down to how we can be creative and strategic in our approach to make more space accessible.
Interesting.
And that's all I'm doing is just trying to be take a different approach to just bring more physical spaces online. That's it. I mean, that's what we've been doing for the past 10 years, and we'll probably do it for another 10 years, and then just chill and watch everybody else take over and do the same thing that we did.
Do you feel like there's kind of like a new guard coming up with people doing things in DC, like arts or events wise?
Yeah, I think a lot of that though is from outside influence. Like people again coming from Florida, a lot of traveling shows, and then again just different collaborations that come to fruition. But I wouldn't say it's a new guard. It's maybe just a new iteration. You know what I mean?
Like just someone else who's come along and maybe start helping out.
Different subset. Like me, again, I would love to see people flourish in a category that I flourished in. You know what I mean? Like especially like with real estate. Real estate is probably one of the hardest.
Look, man, I'm trying, bro. It's not easy.
One of the hardest categories to flourish in. But
do you have a perspective, the state of the arts in DC? I mean, is it just the space, or is that the perspective, or do you have a different perspective?
I mean, it's multidimensional. Like again, looking at different Smithsonian institutions now doing things with like local artists.
Someone else brought that up on my podcast as well.
You never
it's
saw
so
that.
Weird. It's so weird they don't.
You never saw that before, but you're starting to see it now. So it's like it's a slow process, and again, like access to showcase your work. I mean, you can probably name on one hand, Transformer. I mean, there's only a few places that artists can have the ability to showcase, but I think it's coming. So as far as the state of the arts, I think it's just a matter of finding the right mix, the right formula to make it a viable business for artists.
Isn't that weird that we have all these amazing art institutions and they just don't give a shit about what's around them? It's so weird. Like you would think they would care more about the people around them.
I think they do, but the Smithsonians are still driven by Congress, so it's like it's not certain things you can and can't. I mean, look what happened with the the photo from the Women's March, right?
What happened?
Where
What happened?
they blurred out, I think the archives, they blurred out like a sign that said like "fuck Trump" or something like that, right?
Whoa.
And they altered a journalist's authentic photo from Getty Images, and they said it was like a mistake or something like that. But they were probably influenced by Congress, where it was like, nah, you can't put this up, and so that's a whole nother story that's unfolding right now. That I probably need to do some more research on before I get misquoted.
So a journalist took a photo from that recent Women's March, and obviously there's gonna be "fuck Trump" signs everywhere.
Yeah, right.
And when the Smithsonian Institution put it out, they blurred it out. They censored it essentially.
No, it was mounted inside the archives, National Archives. Yeah.
What?
Yeah, and so that it was I probably got I'm forgetting the name, but somebody wrote about it. It was a big article on it.
That's crazy.
So I say check that out for sure.
Yeah, it's super nuts.
Yeah, man. But I mean, that's the state of the art is that it's for an artist, it's like don't stop. You know what I mean? Like continue. Like Instagram now is the platform to showcase what your talent is, and then just your flexibility, your ability to work in a multi-dimensional space or medium, like work with different medias. Don't just stick with vinyl. Do some mixed media or some things that challenge yourself. I mean, that's all that I've been doing as an advocate. Like just challenging myself to do more for artists in our area to flourish. And Culture House was just kind of one of the cool ways to get artists paid. We didn't take any commission. We were the artists retained 100% of all the sales that they made in the gallery space.
Oh, wow.
And just providing other arts opportunities to work with other developers too. I mean, some developers are phenomenal, like Tishman Inspired. There's a lot of developers who want to truly support local arts and not work with design firms from New York or Miami to, influence. I mean, even right across the way with Noma and Kelly Tolles. I mean, he's been doing kind of like a lot.
He's in this building, by the way.
Yeah, he's on top. Yeah. He's at the penthouse level.
Yeah, he's got a nice spot. Well, Ian, I really appreciate your time and you coming and dropping this knowledge on us, man. It really demystifies you. Which has been great.
Which is rare.
Yeah.
But I'm here, man, and sorry it took so long to even link up. But I mean, I enjoyed like talking, and I'm sure we can probably sit here and talk for like 2 more hours.
Definitely could.
I'm cool with that. So if you ever want me to swing back through, I'll come through and I'll bring some wings and some whiskey.
Thank you. I will take you up on that offer because this podcast is going nowhere, and I love to bring people back on. I can only interview so many damn people in this city. I'm
with it.
Awesome, man. Well,
Cool.
guys, please check Ian out. Everything he's a part of.
No doubt.
You're going to enjoy it. But that's it. That's the angle.
Peace.
Hey, All right. Cool, man. Cool. That was fun, man.
Yeah, man.
That was wicked.
Oh, man. It's always a beautiful thing to talk, man.